Welcome everybody. Today we are starting off from where we left yesterday. We were talking about the project stakeholders, and I explained that stakeholders could be divided into three different categories. One are those stakeholders who are within the organization and within the project. That means the biggest stakeholder within the project is the project manager himself, and naturally his project management team and other team members. If we look at stakeholders outside of the project, but within the organization, the biggest stakeholder is the sponsor. And then we have other people from the operational management or functional management, and even the portfolio manager, program manager, PMO, and other staff. If we look at it from the angle of people outside of the organization, then the biggest stakeholder is the customer or the end user. And then we have our subcontractors, sellers, buyers, vendors, and business partners, and government agencies, political groups, media groups, lobbying groups, and other stakeholders, including the public as well. But you see, you have to create your own list of stakeholders for each project. This is not a standard list of stakeholders. Each project may have different stakeholders. So you have to identify your own stakeholders and create your own stakeholder list in the stakeholder register. Yesterday I was about to describe each one of these stakeholders. First, let's talk about the sponsor. Sponsor is the person or group that provides the financial resources in cash or in kind. Now let me first see what sponsor means in English language. This is a person who is supporting the project in any way, the person who is closely associated with the project, who is providing you the financial resources or permissions or anything which project needs to work on. Of course, there could be more than one sponsors. There could be many sponsors to a project. But if project manager is made answerable to so many people, it might cause a lot of problem, and there would be a lot of pulling here and there. Therefore, from project management point of view, we make a single person solely responsible for the project. This person whom I am calling the project initiator or sponsor is the person from within the organization. The organization has made him responsible for the project, and he is providing the project manager with his orders, with his charter, with all his permissions, financial resources, and all the check and balance system. Naturally, this sponsor is not deciding everything alone. Senior management and key stakeholders are behind him. They may not be visible to the project manager directly, but they are making all the decisions behind the sponsor. So, out of the many stakeholders, the key decision makers, the key stakeholders would be sitting behind the sponsor, and we may call them the project board. This project board, project sponsor will be the member of this board, and all the decisions would be coming from there. So all the decisions, all the permissions, all the resources, and everything about the project is actually decided there. But the face of this project board to the project manager is one single person from his own organization, and that is called the project initiator or project sponsor. This is the person from whom project manager seeks all the permissions, and he comes with all his problems to this one person. That is exactly why we have kept only one person as sponsor, as if project manager doesn't have to run from pillar to post. Okay, when a project is first conceived, this person, the sponsor, champions the project. He is the boss of the project, he is the boss of the project manager, and he is as interested in the project as the project manager himself. He serves as a spokesperson to all higher level managements and together support throughout the organization and promote the benefits that the project will bring. So he will actually be the loudspeaker of the project. All the benefits, all the good things about the project, he would be defending the project in front of others. He leads the project through the engagement or selection process until formally authorized. That that what means is that this person sponsor, before the project team is mobilized, before even the project manager is on board, he is alone and he creates the reason for the project. Before project manager is given the charter, the whole project has been on the shoulders of this one person, and until and unless he assigns this project to the project manager through a charter, he authorizes the project to be initiated. Till that time, he is the only one person responsible for the project. But the day he assigns it to the project manager, then he can sit back and relax and start performing other responsibilities. You see, if he is creating the charter of the project and assigning the project to the project manager during that period, he is solely responsible, he is the only person solely responsible for everything happening. If the project is not initiated, everybody who has assigned this project to him would be asking him why the project has yet not started. But as soon as the project charter has been created and it is given to the project manager, uh, then project manager is responsible for running the project. Naturally, after due permissions from the sponsor, project manager cannot do anything without the permission of the sponsor, and naturally the project board and the senior management, but this would happen only after the charter has been given. So this person sponsor plays a significant role in the development of the initial scope and charter of the project, and naturally after this role he would be available only on exceptions. It is called management by exception. That means you assign the responsibility to the responsible person and then sit back and just watch. And only when you are required to interfere, only then when that exception occurs, then you interfere and manage. Otherwise, he is not actively involved in the day-to-day working of the project. The day-to-day working is the responsibility of the project manager. Sponsor and various issues where he manages by exception. For issues that are beyond the control of project manager, they are brought into the notice of the sponsor. They are being escalated. So there must be an escalation path defined. The matters which cannot be resolved by the project manager, he will escalate such matters to the sponsor for his orders or permission. Moreover, the sponsor may also be involved in other important issues like authorizing all the changes to the scope. So that is where he steps in. If there is something, some change in the project scope, time or cost, and project needs to be realigned, the permission for those changes is authorized by the project sponsor, or for that matter, by the project board. Whenever the one phase of a project is finished, it is the project sponsor who will vet that, who will approve that phase and allow the project manager to move on to the next phases. And this point where he decides this is also called go or no go decision. That means it is the project sponsor who may uh, mm, allow you to move ahead, go ahead towards the next phase, or not to go ahead. So project sponsor has the authority to even kill the project at the end of one phase, and he may stop the project to proceeding ahead, whether no matter the project is doing well or not. Mubin asks, sponsor escalates to whom? Home or whom? Probably you mean to whom. Actually, right now what I have said is that project is in the escalation, sponsor is in the escalation path. Project manager will deal everything within the project, and if something he cannot resolve by himself, he will escalate those issues to the sponsor. Now, if sponsor can't resolve anything, there still exists an escalation path. He may take the whole thing to the project board or even to the senior management. That is yet another thing. But there is an escalation path, and project manager escalates everything up to the sponsor, and the sponsor may further escalate it to the next higher level. Did I answer your question, Mubin? Ji, Mubin, are you able to listen to me? Okay, probably you might be having some problem. So we are recording this and we can continue on with that. Next, the next stakeholder, the next important stakeholder is the customer or the user. Now this is very interesting because the customer could be the user, or they could be two different people. So they customer or user, they may be internal to the organization or they may be external to the performing organization. You could be doing a project for your organization or maybe for an outside client. So that means internal and external. As I said, customer and user could be the same person, but at the same time, it is also possible that the person you are doing the project for is the customer, but ultimate user, the end user of that could be a different person. Or it may also be possible that there are so many other people between the customer and the user. Maybe, customer is providing the product to someone and someone is providing to someone else, and ultimately it is reaching the end user. So if the customer and user is one person, then it is the stakeholder. If the customer and users are two different people, then there are two different stakeholders. And if there are 10 people in between the customer and user, all of them will be the stakeholder. So to differentiate between the customer and user, customer is that entity or that body which is which has ordered you to do the project, who have acquired your services, who have given you the contract, or who have assigned you to perform on this project. So you will deliver to the customer whatever you are producing from the project. The product of the project will go to the customer, but the customer might not be the end user. Ultimate user of the product could not be the customer, or as I said, there could be the customer could be the end user of it, or there could be some other end user. User or end user is the person who will actually utilize the project's product, actually directly utilize the product's product. If I have been ordered to manufacture glasses by a customer, I will deliver those glasses to the customer, and customer will supply those glasses to someone else who is the user, who will ultimately use those glasses. So it is not only the customer I have to keep satisfied, but also I have to keep into account the needs of the end user when I am creating these glasses. So customer and user we have just talked about. Then we have got sellers and business partners. Who are the sellers? In this case, when we are doing the project and we want some of the work of the project to be done by someone else because of certain reasons that we can't do it due to the capacity or due to high risk, we may outsource a portion of our project to an outside concern, and that is called the seller who sells his services to us. This could be the vendor, the supplier, or the contractor. So this is another entity who is doing some of the job of the project for us. And we are actually responsible for delivering that product, but seller is supporting us, seller is providing us the services. So for that seller, vendor, supplier, or contractor, we are the buyer. We are the buyer and he is the seller. Sellers are external companies that enter into a contractual agreement to provide those components or services necessary for the project. So we could have produced those components or services ourselves if we could, but because we could not, therefore we decided it to be outsourced and we look for some seller. Now there is another very important stakeholder which is like the seller. It is called the business partner. They are again the external companies, but we have got special relationship with them. They are actually they are the sellers, but the interest of seller is different from the interest of business partner. What if the person with whom I'm getting into a relationship is actually having some kind of financial stakes or other kinds of stakes in my project? Maybe that person is my business partner. Then my success will be his success. But in case of a seller, it might not exactly be true, because seller is providing me specific goods, and if those goods are delivered to me, I will pay him. So his concern is more towards making more profit out of me, and he may not have a soft corner for what I am doing. So he is only binded to us by the contract, and he will fulfill the clauses of the contract. He will not have any personal interest in the betterment of the project and the benefits of the project, that they are yielded or not. But if somehow we can convert this business partner into, this seller into a kind of business partner where his interests are tied to our interests in such a way that as the project progresses, business partner continuously remains engaged and involved with whatever interest we have and whatever benefits of the projects are. I'll give you a further example to that. This actually happened with me when I was doing a project, that was when we were establishing National Database and Registration Authority back in 2098 and 2000. At that time, government did not have sufficient funds to support that project. But naturally, we were assigned the job and we started working on it, and we found out that it is such a huge project and there is so much money required for that. So we started looking for various subcontractors who could support in providing provisions of that project. Actually, that was not a simple project. That was a very complex project, and we required to have 8 different sellers or contractors to help us do it. So we shortlisted them and we were ready to give them the contract, but again the condition was that it had to be, they had to be provided some funding or finances to start the project. But from government, it was told to us that there is nothing available to do that project. Still, government wanted us to do the project. So what we did was we got back to our sellers whom we were about to select, and we asked them to contribute to the project as a business partner. So if they were only sellers, they would be getting a restricted amount of money and profit out of it. But once we offered them to be the business partners, the whole scenario changed. they now had stakes with the project. If they invest in the project, and yes, Jaffer Brothers were also one of the partners with us. We had Jaffer Brothers, we had NCR, we had several other 8 different partners were there. So all these partners agreed to invest into the project, and once the project will yield profits, they would be equal partners in that. Wonderful, Atif. If you had been with that initiative, because it was back in 98, in 2000, I actually was involved in it, but naturally in 2001 I left. Maybe we had met there or not, I don't know. So these partners were all external companies, but they had interest tied to the interest of the project itself. So they were not only looking for getting paid, but they were more interested for getting this project done and yield more profits. The project to yield more profits, as if their profit margin could also be increased. Therefore, it was completely a different kind of relationship than a normal contractor. It was rather a partnership. So this actually benefited us a lot, and at the end of the day, we ended up having all the equipment brought in free by all the business partners. They completed the project. They were paid back for that, for all the equipment and everything. They got their share. And once the project was concluded, all the equipment and the system was the ownership of Nadra, and they had their share and they went back home. And after that, Nadra had a huge asset and a huge operation left over from this project. So this was a wonderful example of having a business partner who has got direct interest in the betterment of the project, and thus a new organization was formed in this way. Then we have other organizational groups. Within the organization, we have got many stakeholders who are internal stakeholders and who are providing some support to the project in one way or the other. I am not exactly saying all of these listed here all will be your stakeholders, but in most of the cases, they will have some stakes with your project, and you have to identify your stakeholders very carefully, as if the appropriate stakeholders are included, like the people from marketing and sales, maybe from human resource, maybe legal, financial, or operations departments, maybe manufacturing and customer services. So these are the people who support the business environment where the projects are executed. So if you see and feel that these people are associated with the project, then probably you will have to consider them as your stakeholders. So, okay. Next, we have the functional managers. Naturally, these operational groups would have their functional managers, and those functional managers may be or may also be our key stakeholders. So, not all the functional managers, but some of the functional managers may have something to do with that project. They have some interest, and we have to include them and look after their interests in this project. Similarly, some of the operations managers will also be your stakeholders in the project. Then there are other stakeholders. There could be other entities within and outside of the project which would have some say and interest in the project. Some may have financial interest, some are contributing something to the project, some have interest with the outcome of the project, and there could be subject matter experts, there could be consultants, government bodies, regulators, financial institutions, other procurement entities. So these all might also be included as your stakeholders. Then as we were studying yesterday, the project, program and portfolio, if that environment does exist, then the portfolio manager or the portfolio review board could be the stakeholder. Program manager, if project is under a program manager will be your stakeholder. PMO, if it is existing in your organization, the PMO would definitely be your stakeholder if you are doing a project in the domain in which the PMO exists. And as you have already seen what are the responsibilities of a PMO, so it will be providing administrative support to you, training, mentoring and coaching and all that. So PMO would definitely be interested and would be a stakeholder for you. Project manager is the biggest stakeholder. Naturally, he is the person who is orchestrating the whole thing. So project managers are assigned by the performing organization to achieve the project objectives. And you see, project manager's job is a very challenging and a high profile role. He himself may not be a very senior person, but he is exposed to the maximum. Whomsoever comes and talks about the project, he wants to talk to the project manager. He wants to interact with the project manager. Even if it is the president of the country or head of a department, if he's talking about this project, he probably wants to interact with the project manager to see what's happening there. So project manager has to deal with so many stakeholders, and he cannot be a very rigid person. He has to be highly flexible. He must have a very good sense of judgment. He should be an excellent leader, and he should have wonderful negotiation skills. And to top it all, he must have a very solid knowledge of about the project management practices. So, as we have already talked about, project manager is one of the important roles in the project itself. So, he has to be not only a good technical manager, he must be a good human being. He must have some very good soft skills. Project manager must be able to understand project details, but this is very important. He must not micromanage. He is a leader. He must groom others as leaders. He must learn to delegate. He must not try to do everything. So he must only manage from the overall project perspective. He must provide guidelines and help and prompt his subordinates, not try to do everything by his own hand. So the responsibilities of the project managers are many. As we said, he is the person responsible for the success of the project. He is the leader. He is orchestrating the whole show. A project manager is in charge of all aspects of the project. That means he will be involved in the development of the project management plan, all ingredient and component plans. He would be tracking the progress of the project and the funding. He will be identifying, monitoring, and responding to all the risks, and he would provide accurate and timely reporting of the project metrics. Therefore, project manager has a very, very important role. Rather, I would say the most important role in the project is of the project manager. And as I have already talked about the importance of this person, he is leading it. So he is communicating with anybody and everybody. He is talking to all the stakeholders. That is exactly why we said he must be very flexible. He is the center of interaction. So most of the time he is communicating with all the stakeholders, and communication must be his one better skill. Team members, project team that involves the project manager, the people who are assisting him in the project, in management of the project management team, and then all the other team staff who may be coming in temporarily or permanently, who carry out actually the work of the project and who are not necessarily involved with the management of the project. But the project management team are those people who are involved in the management of the project. Other team members include those people also who are not directly involved with the management of the project, but they are working. The team is comprised of individuals from different groups with knowledge of a specific subject matter. So these people may come and go, but they will bring in their specific subject matter knowledge with a specific set who carry out the work of the project. These are actually the people who are doing the, who are creating the product of the project. Coming back to the concept of project governance, as I had already introduced you what the project governance is under the big umbrella of the organizational governance. So this is an oversight function that is aligned with the organization's governance model. So the organizational governance is the leading factor for this project governance, and we have to strictly abide by that, but at the same time we have to create some laws and rules of our own for running the project. And this organizational governance model must be able to encompass the project lifecycle. Project governance framework provides the project manager and team with a structure, processes, decision-making models and tools for managing the project while supporting and controlling the project for successful delivery. So there should be a fantastic framework which should help us do the things of the project management in a very structured manner. There should be, a crystal clear mechanism how to go ahead specifically for this project. You see, when I say project governance framework, it does not mean any project governance framework. For every project, there has to be specific instructions. It is not a generalized governance framework. This is for this specific project. The generalized rules and regulations and policies and procedures and all those things might be available already in the organizational process assets held by PMO, and we can definitely use them, but they are not all mandatory to us. But whatever is mentioned in the project governance framework, that becomes a law. In this specific project, we will create a project governance framework for this project, and these instructions provided in governance framework are the law. We, as a project staff, would be bounded by this framework, and we must do as the framework says, or it would be not fair to do the project because it is criminal not to follow the law. So this governance framework will be different from project to project. Every project will have its own project governance framework, and the project management plan thus developed is strictly abiding by this project governance framework. So you see the importance of this project governance framework. Project governance is a critical element of any project, especially on complex and risky projects. You see, if the project is a small little project of 2 or 3 days, you might not have some intricate project governance framework in place. Still, you may be able to do it. But for complex projects, risky projects, you have to probably have a proper framework that would ensure that you be successful in completing this project. So this is more important, more necessary in the cases where we are dealing with complexity. It provides a comprehensive and consistent method of controlling the project and ensuring its success by defining and documenting and communicating reliable, repeatable project practices. So whatever we will do in this project according to this governance structure would actually be leaving out the lessons learned for projects to come. So this is a comprehensive method, this is a consistent method, and if we follow this, then we can, be sure that whatever we are doing is as per the law, as per the rules being suggested to us in the project governance structure. So what does it include, this framework, project governance framework? This is basically for making project decisions, and it specifically defines the roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities, and these are required and they are important for the success of the project. What are the different roles in this project? Who is responsible? So you see, these are particular instructions about this project. This is not a general information. Who is the project manager? What are his responsibilities? What can he do? Who is to be held accountable for what? So this is more of legal information for this project. So if these things are known, it determines the effectiveness of the project manager. Project governance is defined by and fits within the larger context of the portfolio program or the organization sponsoring it, but is separate from organizational governance. So what does it really mean? If your project exists under a program, it would be under a bigger umbrella of the program governance framework. If it is under a portfolio, it would be governed by the portfolio governance framework. So there is a governance framework for everyone. And if I can look at it from the angle of the whole organization, there is a one big organizational governance framework under which we may have a portfolio governance framework, under which we may have a program governance framework and under which we may have our project governance mechanism. But this is not exactly how it is going to happen in every project. Sometimes there is portfolio umbrella, sometimes it is not, sometimes there will be programs, sometimes there will be not. It is not necessary for the project to be directly linked with the organizational governance. It may come through the programs and portfolios, but we do understand that the overall governance of the organization is definitely playing some role, and project governance will be the sub rules of the same. Though these subsequent governances could be more detailed in nature, but they have to abide by the overall organizational governance. For project governance, PMO may also play some decisive role. Project governance involves the stakeholders as well as documented policies, procedures and standards, responsibilities, authorities. So PMO may be able to provide those things from their organizational process assets, from the archives PMO is holding. So PMO could be a very important archive. It could provide us the practices which should be adopted in the governance. So that could be a good input. Examples of the elements of the project governance framework could be the project success and deliverable acceptance criteria. So that could be extracted from the previous exercises, from the previous projects, lessons learned and all that. And also the process to identify, escalate and resolve the issues that arise during the project. That is the definition of the issue escalation path. If in this project, if there is some problem, some issues arise, how and who will solve that? You see, this framework is all about roles, responsibilities and authorities and segregation and some kind of identification of KPIs, some kind of specific details about the success of the project. We want to lead our project towards the success through this governance mechanism, and this is a specific governance mechanism for this project, and every project will have its own project governance framework or mechanism. Within those constraints as well as the additional limitation of time and budget, it is up to the project manager and the project team to determine the most appropriate method of carrying out the project. And this we already know that project manager and his team are responsible for coming up with a mechanism as to how we will do this project. Now, while the project governance is the framework in which the project team performs, the team is still responsible for planning, executing, controlling and closing the project. Project governance approach should be described in the project management plan. Now this is very interesting. Why? Because project management plan has to abide by the project governance structure, and at the same time we are saying that project governance approach should be described in the project management plan. How is it possible? Now let us look at it. Basically, your boss, that is the sponsor, does not know the details of the project. Project manager, when given the charter, he gets back to his planning with his team and he looks at all the aspects of this project. What are the requirements, what are the possible ways of doing this job and how it could be done. And after it has properly analyzed everything, they come up with a number of approaches to do this project. So those various approaches are properly analyzed, and then the most appropriate approach is selected, and that appropriate approach is further subdivided into certain number of phases or steps in which the project should be carried out, and this suggestion is put up to the sponsor or the project board to approve it. Once that mechanism is approved, that would define the roles, responsibilities, authorities, major parts of the project, what are the products or at what stage, and what are the KPIs, how they are to be checked and everything. These things will then, when they are approved by the higher management, they will then become the law. Now, you will be allowed to do the project, to start the project, and the senior management or the project sponsor and the project board, they would then take this document as project governance and will check the performance of the project according to those roles, responsibilities and all that which they have approved. If you have decided to divide your project in 5 phases, then they will come after every phase and they will say, okay, at the end of phase 1 you must have produced this product, show us that product, we want to check it, and if those KPIs, all the KPIs have been met, only then we will allow you to proceed ahead. This is go no go decision. So this is also management by exception. They are not interfering with your job, but they are only coming when they are required to be, checking your work. And moreover, in case you have a problem, the escalation path is also part of the governance mechanism, and therefore you can always get in touch with your sponsor or people from whom you seek the decisions. So this is a decision-making framework as well. Decisions are made regarding who will be involved, the escalation procedures, what resources are necessary, and the general approach to completing the project, the work. Another important consideration is whether more than one phase will be involved, and if so, the specific life cycle for the individual project. As I said, in how many phases you have suggested to do this project. This is the project manager is suggesting. But once that suggestion is accepted, then it becomes the law. Then project governance people will have to check it according to that. G. Mubin, I see you keep coming and going. What is the problem? Okay, I am very sorry for that. Is it the internet problem or some other problem? Probably you can't even speak, huh? Okay, okay. We are recording everything. You can listen to it whenever the net is all right. But at the same time, I'm really sorry that you cannot participate in what we are doing. This is an important lecture we are going on with, but you can always hear it later on. Right. So this is about the project governance. Now something about the project success. You see, we have developed the governance with project success in mind. So success is directly associated with the governance. So let us see what do we have about the nature of the project and the success. Since projects are temporary in nature, we understand projects are temporary in nature. The success of the project should be measured in terms of completing the project within the constraints of, and what are the constraints? Scope, time, cost, quality, resources, risk, and other things also, which may include communication and other things. So when we talk about constraints, they are not only 2 or 3 or 4 constraints, there are many constraints, maybe 7, 8 or more. So scope, time and cost and quality are definitely the constraints, but as far as the scope, time and cost is concerned, they are even more important within these constraints because we call them the project objectives. Our project object cannot be defined. A project cannot be defined without the scope, time and cost. And therefore scope and time and cost have got some other importance than they are just being the constraints. But anyways, if we only talk about the constraints, then they are not only these 3 constraints, there are many constraints. There are 7 or 8 constraints in a project, and these constraints are those constraints which affect each other. If any one of these things changes, it affects many other things. So one constraint can affect many other constraints. So if you change the scope of the project, the time may be shuffled, cost may be disturbed, quality may be bothersome, and many other things could be disturbed. So completing the project within these constraints as approved between the project manager and the senior management. So when you get your project management plan approved, the senior management agrees that this is the way of doing the project and this have been allowed to you. And if you can meet it with these parameters, you will be successful. So your success has been defined according to this. And to ensure realization of benefits for the undertaken project, a test period such as a soft launch in services can be part of the total project time before handing it over to the permanent operations. So here we are talking about something interesting again, and that is realization of benefits. And if you remember, we have talked about the benefit realization with the perspective of the program management, and this is the first time we are talking about realization of benefits from our project. Now let me explain this a bit. Do projects also realize some kind of benefits? Definitely. Every project is there for the purpose of realizing some benefits, but as far as the project manager is concerned, he is only concerned about delivering the product of the project. You see, if there is a 6-month project and you are to construct a school, that school once constructed is the product of this project, and once it is constructed you hand it over to the operations and they are responsible for running it. But why the school was constructed? The reason might have been to educate people in a certain area. What if after the delivery of the project it never performs? It is never, students are never enrolled there, school never works, and ultimately the expected benefits are never realized. Anyways, this is not the responsibility. The realization of the ultimate benefits why the school was constructed is not the responsibility of project manager, but before he starts the project, this is the responsibility of project manager to see if this job which has been given to him does align with the organizational strategy. If it does not, then he can speak up. And during the life of the project, when the project is happening, at any point in time, he can highlight this fact that the place where we are trying to construct the school is never going to be populated because it is too far away from population. So these kind of objections can be launched by the project manager. But once the project has been completed and delivered, the school has been delivered, then project manager has absolutely no responsibility for the realization of the benefits. But in some projects, it is sometimes necessary to transit the project to the operations in a smooth way. So in a sense, the transition and sustainability of the project may be a part of the project itself. In that case, a test period can be assigned. Once we have constructed the school, we will run it for a specific period of time, like you are doing a project on a turnkey basis. So we have not only constructed the school, we are running this school for some period of time, and once it is in full motion, it starts performing, then we will smoothly transit it to the operations or the customer. Anyways, this is the concept of the realization of benefit, and we do understand that projects also have benefits, but as far as projects are concerned, the benefit realization is not the responsibility of the project manager. Whomsoever has ordered this project, the sponsor would be held responsible, or for that matter, the customer would be held responsible for realization of those benefits. But during the time you are doing this project, you are actually working on this project, it is your responsibility to highlight if anything abnormal is happening. So that much is your responsibility, but naturally, as I said, benefit realization is not part of the project manager's job. Project success should be, no, project success is something which is associated with the benefit realization. So project success should be referred to the last baselines approved by the authorized stakeholders. The project manager is responsible and accountable for setting realistic and achievable boundaries for the project and to accomplish the project within the approved baselines. Right. Any questions so far?
It's clear, sir.
So is it fine? So I see Shahid has come, Sayyid Raza is also here today. Uh, yes, Shahid, how is everything? Muhammad Ali and Rijo did not join us today. Sayyid Raza, how is the experience going?
Thank you very much.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, wonderful.
Well, I had a question.
Yeah, please, please. Yeah, please.
Okay, go into a bit of benefit realization, like what is expected from project in sense of benefits realization. Maybe they are set goal points or something they want to achieve or they are beyond that.
Okay, okay. You see, when I say benefits, benefits are long term. They are not exactly the output or the product of the project. You know, as I said, the objective of constructing this school could be to, to educate 5,000 students in next 5 years. Now, this benefit will only yield after 5 years. I cannot yield this profit, this benefit when the school is constructed. But the first step is to construct the school. Construction of the school is the project, but the benefits which are long term are the responsibility of the person who has ordered to construct the school. He will realize those benefits. So mostly these are called the benefit realization, that if you take on the responsibility of the benefit realization, the project will extend to another 5 years.
And secondly, how do you do a soft launch? You said that by doing a soft launch.
Okay, if I am asked to, kind of on a turnkey basis, I am asked to set up a system. I have to install the system. My job is to just install the system. So I have installed the system, but I also am assigned that I have to transition this system to the end user in a smooth way. So what I do is I will start involving in the soft launch period when I have constructed the system and everything is in place. I will involve the end user or the customer in training of in understanding of that system. I will train them. I will smoothly transit the working of the system to them, and I will overlook them. I will oversee how they are using the new system, and as soon as I am confident they are now able to handle it by themselves, I will extricate from the project. So this is a soft launch period. Got it?
Yes, of course. So it's not just kind of starting a project or something like that, is it?
I did not get that.
Well, in soft launch, is it like starting a project on a smaller scale or
Right, right. Yeah, you can say that, but I'm not really meaning to say that. You see, for the school, as I was giving the example, my objective was, or the project which was assigned to me was to construct the school. And a clause in that was that you have to hand over the school on a turnkey basis. So I will have to construct the school, not only the school, but I have to hand it over to you in a functioning position. So that does not mean that all the benefits of that school has been realized at that time, but I have run the school to a certain extent, maybe 2 or 3 months, and in a running order, I'm handing it over to you. Rest, the next 4 or 5 years of the benefit realization will be handled by the customer. Now, what you are saying is called what do you call that? In IT, we have a spiral model. A spiral model means that I start small, do a small little thing, realize that, and then I make a bigger model of that, and then do it, and then in subsequent cycles, I keep growing bigger and bigger, and ultimately I achieve all my benefits. Yes, that is a model. That is called a spiral model. Things are done that way as well. But I'm talking about a simple project in which there is a requirement of, transitioning and transferring the benefits to the customer in a smooth way. So smooth transaction could be done as I have just explained.
So also for
Mubin, if you can probably write it down because your voice is breaking up.
it can
Atif has said test run, right? It is very right. It's kind of a test run. Okay, should we move ahead?
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Is it some kind of, it's related to factory acceptance test?
It
Can we
can,
relate it to this?
it can be. You could give it any flavor. From a simple project to a complex project, there could be certain requirements like, sometimes the maintenance contract is also included in the project. Sometimes the turnkey portion is included. Sometimes the factory testing is included. So these are different flavors of the same thing. Yes, you are right in saying that this is an example of transitioning the benefits of the project to the customer. Right. So we are not hearing from Mubin any further. Mubin, you can write me later on if you like, and we can continue this talk, or maybe I can respond to you by email or something. Now let us move on to another topic, and that is the project teams. Although we have already understood that project is uh, divided into three parts. One is the project manager himself. Other is the people who are helping the project manager in management of the project. These are the supervisors, assistant project managers, and other people who are helping the project manager in the management affairs and the planning work. These are called project management team. And then is a project team that includes everyone. That includes the project manager, that includes the project management team, and that includes all the people who are working on the project off and on. These could be the permanent people who are working with the project, or sometimes the customer is also joining in for some time. Some subject matter experts or consultants are also participating. So they all are included in the project team. So here we talk about the composition of the project team. The project team includes naturally the project manager and the group of individuals who can act together in a performing of the work of the project to achieve its objective. And this is really very important, that you orchestrate the team in such a manner that this is most proficient in accomplishing the goals of the project and meeting the project success. This is important for you. So the team should not have redundancies. No redundant team members, no stupid team members. This should be the most efficient team you want to have. Project team includes the project manager, the project management staff, and other team members who carry out the work but who are not necessarily involved with the management of the project. So all of the people working on the project are not managing the project. There are only few people who are actually responsible for the management things, like the management staff itself or the project manager himself. But everybody is not managing the project. There are some people who are working only. The team is comprised of individuals from different groups with specific matter knowledge or with a specific skill set to carry out the work of the project. So I have a carpenter who is an expert in carpentry. So he is here just to do his job. He's not here to manage everything. He is for doing specific jobs, and he has got specific skills. The structure and characteristic of a project team can vary widely. Naturally, from project to project, we need to have different skill sets and different requirements for having these people on coming on board with the project. But one constant is the project manager's role. Project manager will always be there as the leader of the team, regardless of what authority the project manager may have over its members, but the role of project manager will be there. What roles are there in project team? As I have already explained to you, naturally the project manager is there, then the project management staff, which includes the supervisors, the assistant project managers, or other planning staff or management staff working with the project. Then is the project staff who are actually involved in the project, but then we also have other people who are on and off becoming available to the project for certain jobs, and then they leave. For example, you have some supporting experts, subject matter experts, some users and customer representatives on and off coming in and working with you on the project. Then you have got the subcontractors or sellers or business partners for that matter. So these all roles you will be interacting with them on and off throughout the life of the project. The project management staff, the people who are involved in the planning of the project with the project manager, so they will actually be able to help you develop the schedule, the budget, the reporting and controlling, communication, risk management, administrative support, and in some cases where a PMO exists and PMO is of that type that wants to control the project, this role may be performed or supported by a project management office. Then as the project staff, this is the members of the team who carry out the work, who actually work on the project which creates the deliverable. Supporting experts, as I said, these are the subject matter experts which you may need to have as consultants or something, who will help you do certain parts of the project, maybe in deciding certain things. Supporting expert perform activities required to develop or execute the project management plan. This can include a role like contracting, financial management, logistics, legal, safety, engineering. You could have a consultant in any one of these areas. Depending on the size of the project and level of support required, supporting experts may be assigned to work full-time or may just participate on the team with their particular skills as required. So coming back to the example of Nadra, there we had 8 different consultants on short-term basis for 6 months. When the project was not was in initial planning, we had 6 different consultants in 8 different consultants in 8 different areas who helped us plan. Once the planning was done and we were actually in the procurement state, these consultants were laid off, and then we moved on when the contracts were finalized with the contractors. Then we got into another kind of consultancies, and that was the long-term consultants. They were for the duration of the whole project, and they were helping us in the conduct of the project. So they stayed with us for a longer period of time, and they were actually involved in checking the work of the contractors and all that. Users and customer representatives, members of the organization who will accept the deliverable or product of the project, may be assigned to act as representatives or liaisons to ensure proper coordination, advise on requirements, validate the acceptability of the project results. This is for the user acceptance testing. Sometimes the customer may need to send his people to actually inspect the scope when before the deliverable can be handed over. That is called user acceptance testing, but it is not necessary that it is always the customer person who is a member of that organization coming for the acceptance. Sometimes they just give you a checklist and you do the user acceptance testing by yourself. Then we have sellers. These are the contractors we have. Sellers, also called vendors, suppliers, or contractors, are external companies that enter into a contractual agreement to provide components or services necessary for the project. The project team is often assigned the responsibility to oversee the performance and acceptance of sellers. deliverables or services. So for the portion of the work you are outsourcing, project team is only responsible for overseeing them. During the execution of the project team assigns the projects to these sellers, and once the contracts have been signed and agreement has been finalized, then we just oversee them. If the sellers bear a large share of the risk for delivering the project results, they may play a significant role on the project team. Business partners, as we have already discussed, because then their interest changes. If they are no more the seller but they are the business partner, then they have more chances to be involved in the project while the project is happening, and they have they are key stakeholders there. The composition of the project team varies based on the factors such as organization culture, scope, and location. Actually, multicultural environment, you're dealing with the project is actually interacting with more than one geographic locations, maybe international locations, the scenario will completely change. The relationship between the project manager and the team varies depending on the authority of the project manager. In some cases, a project manager may be the team's line manager with full authority over its members, like in the projectized structure. In other cases, a project manager may have little or no direct organizational authority over the team members. Maybe it is weak metrics or a balanced metric or something like that. Project manager may not have all the authority in that case. The composition of these project teams could be, as you remember, in the functional organization and a weak matrix and in a balanced matrix, we had part-time team members. But you remember, in strong matrix and the projectized organizational structure, we had dedicated staff. So both of these structures could exist. In a dedicated team, all or majority of the project team members are assigned to work full-time on the project. The project team may be co-located or it could be virtual. Maybe, in a multicultural environment, international environment, you have a team sitting in London, a team sitting here. They usually report directly to the project manager. This is the simplest structure for a project manager, as a line of authority are clear and team members can focus on the project objectives. In a part-time basis, some projects are established as temporary additional work with the project manager and team members working on the project while remaining in their existing organization and continuing to carry out their normal functions. So these people are working part-time, they are doing the functional responsibilities, but they are also performing some of the project duties. The functional manager maintains the control over the team members and the resources allocated to the project. Project manager is likely to continue performing other management duties as well. So maybe the project manager is also working part-time. Part-time team member may also be assigned to more than one project at a time. So the person in a functional department who is doing the functional job may be working on 3 different projects also at the same time. Although this is not really very advisable, but this does happen in some of the organizations. Therefore, we cannot say that it should not happen. It does happen, but the best way would be if I could have a dedicated team. It is the ideal projectized structure in which project manager desires to have a dedicated team. Dedicated and part-time project team compositions may exist in any of the organizational structures. Dedicated project teams are often seen in projectized organization, as I was saying, where most of the organizational resources are involved in project work and project manager have a great deal of independence and authority. Part-time project teams are common within the functional organization. Matrix organizations use both dedicated as well as the part-time project teams. Other members who have limited involvement at various stages of a project can be thought of as part-time project team members, like the consultants, subject matter experts, and other people who are coming and going in the project. They could be considered as part-time. Project team composition may also vary based on the organizational structure. Whatever type of organizational structure is there, your project team composition would be according to that. Project may be established as a partnership or a joint venture or a consortium or alliance among several organizations through contract or agreement. In that case, one organization takes the lead role and assigns a project manager to coordinate the effort among the partners. This is a difficult undertaking, but yes, this is also a way in which projects do happen, and you might have worked in some similar kind of environment in which more than one organization, 5 organizations are jointly doing a project and one team is taking the lead and they assign the project manager of their own. Partnership-based projects like this can offer flexibility at lower cost. These advantages may be offset by the project manager's lower degree of control over team members and the need for strong mechanism for communication and monitoring progress. You see, if we have got 5 different organizations participating in this partnership, then probably project manager will have problems. He cannot have that level of control which he expects to exercise on his teams. He may not have a very strong mechanism of communication. He may not be able to communicate to many team members from other organizations who are otherwise under him. But at the same time, those different 5 organizations are specialized in their whatever work they're doing, and therefore this can be offset. We can compensate for these disadvantages by having the expertise of those organizations, and they take the responsibility of certain portions of the project. Partnership projects may be set up to exploit industrial synergies, to undertake ventures that one partner could not afford alone, or for other political and strategic reasons. You see, when there is a huge, big project running in a country, is about to start in a country, they require a consortium of experts of some of the foreign experts, some of the local experts, and there might be, like the Islamabad airport, which is right now being constructed, there is a complete consortium, and that consortium includes at least about 7, 8 different companies, and they have different roles. Though there is no one control over all the whole thing, but they still compensate for each other's, expertise, and ultimately they are able to perform even better. This is a kind of a synergy which is created. Project team composition may also vary due to geographic locations of its members. Sometimes your members are far apart in different parts of the world. Communication technologies allow team members in different locations or countries to work as virtual teams. And that is very interesting. If you have worked in a virtual team, then probably the distances do not matter. But naturally, there is a requirement to on and off see each other as if you have a physical touch. Virtual teams are often necessary for projects where resources are located in on-site or off-site or both, depending on the project activities. Project manager who is leading a virtual team needs to accommodate differences in culture, working hours, time zones, local conditions, and languages. I have worked on several projects like that, and in that, you see, I used to have a team which was working in 5 different countries, and we had to have a meeting every week, and we used to find a time which was most suitable for all of them. Then once we were discussing in that meeting, we had to ensure that we speak in a common language and a simple language. Moreover, we had such a good meeting mechanism. The minutes of the meeting and everything was so well timed that we do not waste any time in lot many other things which could have been the time wasters. So that way you can make even the geography as a benefit by use of technology. So any doubts so far?
It's clear, sir.
Okay. Right. The next topic is extremely important. I would like to discuss it in a little detail here. I know this is the fag end of the day, and we may not capture all of the things very quickly, but I will just seek your attention here that this is important. We must pay a little more attention towards this topic because this might be sometimes misunderstood in some circles. What is a project life cycle? So let us ask you, what do you think a life cycle is? Are there your views?
So it's the total life of a project from start till end or till the deliverable.
Right.
Whatever it has in between pertains to the life cycle of the project.
Wonderful. So what do you think where the project should start, where the project should end? What could be the starting point of a project?
Is this question to me?
What could be the starting point of a project?
The starting is like at the when we have done with the preliminaries and the planning process, and then of course at the execution part is the starting of the project that I believe.
Okay.
Sir, I think so. From conceiving the idea of the project till the end of the project, when the your product is acceptable by the client or customer, and even though if you are giving after sales services,
Right.
that can be also the part of the project life cycle.
Wonderful. That is beautiful. If we are not only talking about our project, we are talking about the life cycle of anything for that matter, then it is right from conception to its termination. So even a human life cycle, if you want to quote it, it starts right from conception until death. So in a human life cycle, how many stages do we have? Although this is the same human being living his life right from birth till death, but various portions of his life could be clearly segregated, and those could be considered as various phases of a man's life, of a human life cycle. So what could those life cycle phases could be?
It could be from a child, then a young age, then old age.
Wonderful. So you see, we can divide a human life cycle into certain phases. And those certain phases could be the childhood, the youth, the middle ages, maybe the old age, and so on and so forth. So this is how we can divide, because this is the same person, but he exhibits different characteristics in different phases of his life. As a child, we expect different behavior from that person. As a young person, we have certain other expectations, and so on and so forth. Although the person is the same, right? So we can, and do these phases really required for the human being? Otherwise, God has created man, but does the God need these phases? Who has created these?
I think it's for our convenience
Exactly.
or for client convenience
Yes,
in this phase.
this is for our own convenience, that we have divided the life cycle of a person into certain portions, as if we can segregate and say that you are no more a child now, you are an adult. Now you can get married, or now you can retire. So for our own ease of handling, we have created certain rules and laws within our community, and those rules and laws are associated with a human life cycle, like the age of retirement, like the age of adulthood, when you can be issued a national identity card. And you see, these rules are man-made, and they might be different from one place to the other. The adulthood is considered to be 18 years of age in Pakistan. But in various parts of America, they have got different, adulthood years. Like you see, in some of the portions, they are 16 years is that considered the adulthood age. Some portions they have 21 years as adulthood age. So whatever that is the law of the land, but that is all the definition of the life cycle of the human being. Similarly, if we consider that the projects need also to be divided into some kind of life cycle, some phases have to be described as if we can exercise better control. Why are we having these life cycles for a human life cycle? Because we want to have better control over certain things, to create certain laws and let the things happen. So in a project also the same thing is there. I would like to quote the start of a human life cycle. Generally, we think that the birth of a person is considered the start of a human life cycle. But I will take the cue from a previous point which was given probably by Sayyid Raza, and that was from conception. So human life cycle also starts right from conception. The human being exists as soon as he is conceived. And in China, the life cycle, the age of a person is determined by the date of conception, not by the date of birth. So that is an interesting example to show that the life cycle of a human being has started right from conception and it will continue till he dies. So this was just on a lighter note, but yes, there could be exactly according to the conception. So for project, why do we need a life cycle? Because we need to define where the project starts and where project ends. Now, for a project, how do we have the project phases? What could be the project phases? How many could be the project phases? What should be the name of these project phases? So this is the question. If I ask you to create a project life cycle and your project is to construct a school, how many phases should you have and what should you name them? Yes, on to you. What should be the number of phases and how should you name them? Anyone?
First would be the idea.
Idea.
Of course, that idea came into the mind. And second is the more deep, you may say a planning, where exactly it has to be built, the place, based upon environment, and based upon the objectives. Like if the place plays a very important role in the area where it has to be located, and then the finances, the finance part. So I think it is the idea conception, then arrangement of finances, planning process, execution, building, and then same like a project, we have.
Okay, very fine. Any other ideas? Anyone else?
Sir, after arranging the financials, then we will plan for construction, acquiring the land, construction, then procurement of the goods or any items. And once construction is done, then I think hiring of the teachers, course material, advertising, these are all stages, I think.
Very good. So you see, we have a clear idea that project should be divided into, clear phases But you see what phases you have told me. First, I'll talk about Atif. Atif, you have given me a number of phases, but your phases did not represent the construction of the school. They were very general.
Execution is the construction of the school. I was talking in sense of a project. So execution means to procure a land and then construct it. And of course, you need to have a place.
That was too generic. That was too generic. Whatever you are creating, whatever is the project, you should focus on the work of the project. You should divide your project into major parts. And another interesting thing was you said financing. Financing could be a continuous process, or maybe you are just mentioning you are organizing the financing, mobilizing the financing, or something like that. That could be all right.
Yes.
But if it is a continuous process, the financing will keep coming. Remember, the phases you devise should be such that if possible, they should not overlap. If possible, they should not overlap. That is the best way of doing it.
Okay.
And secondly, they should relate to the technical work of the project. They should not be too generic. Thirdly, we should never ever confuse them with the project management process groups like initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and close. These are the project management process group. These are not the life cycle. Although none of you have given me that, but normally people say that these are the project phases: initiation of the project, planning of the project, execution. No, this is not. These are not the phases. You must keep in mind the technical work, what you are doing, what you are constructing, what is your project, and divide that work into surgically separate portions or parts and name them according to the technical work involved in it. So I would rather like the phases given by Sayyid Raza. They're even better because they are more specific. But the only thing I notice in that is that uh, they have to be a bit more clearly marked, as if I can say that this happens after this has finished. So because I want to see them in a sequence, one after the other. If you find that some of the things have to be overlapped, then probably you should not make them phases. Because two phases cannot be done simultaneously. I mean to say, you cannot start two phases together. The only possibility I can give you is that probably one phase is still not complete and you are forced to start the next phase a little earlier, so that I can accommodate. But if you say phase 2 and phase 3 have started simultaneously, then I will have a major objection to that. So this is one part, how the phases should be made. Then you both were very right in the number of phases you created. They were few in number. How many phases should be there in a project? This is yet another question. So anyone who can contribute to that? How many phases should you have in this project? Any number, come up with a number. 2, 5, 10, 20, 100, 200, 500, 1000, 10,000. Yes, please.
So we can have as many phases as we can manage. I think manage easily. It depends on our management style, on our resources. I think it can be different for each project.
Wonderful. Right. And any other opinion?
Five phases, sir. I think that would be 5 phases.
5 phases. Okay.
Yeah.
Now let us look at the both answers. Well, you are right, Sayyid Raza, that we can have as many phases as we can manage. I would add comfortably. As many phases as we can manage comfortably. What if there is a complex project and say there are 200 phases? 200 phases is a pain. How can you keep a record of 200 phases, and if somebody asks you in which phase you are and you say, okay, I'll check check up in my diary and I will tell you it is 147th phase, and I would say what is the name of that phase, and nobody can remember the name of that phase, and it has to be read out of the diary. So it is not so. We want to enumerate the phases easily and comfortably. They should be as few as possible, or I would say as few as one can remember. So yes, you are right, Sayyid Raza, that phases should be few. But they could be as many as is comfortable, but that comfortable number could be something like which you can easily enumerate. And what one can easily enumerate is, my theory is that God has given you two hands and each hand has 5 fingers. Generally, we have a dominant hand and I have 5 fingers in that. So 5 is an ideal figure to enumerate anything. So generally speaking, it is a general rule, 5 is a very good number. But if you want to have 3 phases, that is okay with me. 4 is okay, 5 is okay. And even if it is a complex project and you can have more phases, then probably 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, something like that. But you do not have to cross two hands. You do not have to go into double figures. Because as soon as you go into double figures, you are adding misery to your whole thing. You can't, you won't be able to remember all of them. So to keep the thing simple, we will try to restrict the number of phases to a minimum. But naturally, there should not be a single phase. Yes, for a very simple project, for a very small project, I can have a single phase. But generally speaking, even a small project, I would rather like to divide at least in 3 phases. At least in 3 phases. And the 5 is a very ideal figure. 6, 7 is all right with me. So the number of phases should be few and easily rememberable. Then we said the names of the phases, as we have already described, should pertain to the technical work of that phase. Whatever you are producing in that phase, every phase should deliver something. Every phase will have its own deliverable. Although the project has a larger deliverable, the end product, but every phase should also be able to deliver something. And every phase will be treated like an independent project. Every phase will have a start and will have an end. Every phase will have a deliverable. So throughout the project, we will then be able to achieve various deliverables in various phases, one after the other, and slowly we will be accomplishing something. So in small successes, we will be moving towards our ultimate target, the end product. So that would be a very fantastic way of completing a project. Now, this way we can also ensure and confirm that all the phases we have completed, they have been accepted and paid for. If I am in the 5th phase and somebody says your first phase 1 is disapproved and you have to go back to square one, that is not justified. You must clear off the phase 1, 2, 3, 4 before you start phase 5. Nobody should be able to cancel phase 1. Phase 1 is done, it cannot be cancelled. Phase 2 is done, it cannot be cancelled. If at all there is a change and everything we have done so far is going to go waste, then it is not the problem of the project manager. That would be a strategic problem, and they may dump this project and restart it right from the beginning. That is some other thing. This is not that you keep changing the scope of the project and every time you start from square one. We don't want to do that. Are you with me on that?
Sure, sir, 100%.
Okay. So, for Ji, Vasif, I am unable to make out what you are saying. Can you write it down in the chat window? Okay. So a project life cycle is the series of phases that a project passes through from its initiation to its closure. So we agree with the general idea of conception to the termination. So it's right from the beginning to the end. Then the phases are generally sequential. Although I do agree that there could be sometimes there could be some overlap, but please do not make it a habit. The overlap you create, that would result in fast tracking, and fast tracking is increasing the risk. If I have not completed phase 1 and I start doing the phase 2, then the overlap period is a dangerous period. I am taking the risk. Although I will be able to perform earlier, the project will be completed earlier, but at the same time I am taking a risk. You see, if you have to construct a 2-story building and one story is one phase and the other story is the second phase, you are supposed to take a clearance after the phase 1, get its approval, payment and everything, and then moving on to the phase 2. But the people who have to give you the approval, they say, well, we don't have time, we are busy, we can't give you the approval right now, so you please start the phase 2 and we will ultimately give you the approval. So what will happen is, you have almost completed phase 2 and the second story is also almost completed, and you do not have the approval for phase 1, the first story, and ultimately someone comes in and he rejects phase 1 and he asks you to demolish first story. So what will happen to the second story? You have taken a risk to achieve more speed. You have constructed a wonderful story, second story, which may not have any problems, but because the first story is going to fall, everything is going to fall along with it. So you have taken that much risk. Should you or should you not? I don't ask you not to take that kind of risk. If at all it is necessary for your project, you may take risks, but at the same time, you must know what is your tolerance. How much can you bear? Can you bear this much loss? Some people can, some people can't. So you must know your risk tolerance. So you should take only that much risk which you can afford. That's why try to do the things in sequence. Now let's talk about two life cycles. The project life cycle, the other is product life cycle. This is important to understand because when we say conception till termination, that definition applies to both product life cycle as well as the project life cycle. But we have a tendency of confusing them together. Project life cycle is from where the project starts and where the project ends. Product life cycle is from where the product conception is done and where the product is finished. So what would be the product life cycle? Can you give me an example of that? What is a product life cycle? When does it start?
Sir, when a customer or client start using the product, I think that is the start of the product life cycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me,
and when it is finished, yeah.
Tell me, has the product at this point?
Sorry, you're not audible. Can you come again?
Has the idea of the product conceived at this point when the product was created, or the idea had come earlier? Did you get me? Previously, say there is a
sorry, I think there is some connection problem. I didn't hear your question.
Okay. Previously, you said that a life cycle is from conception till termination. Do you think the idea of the product was conceived when it had been produced?
The idea of product, I think when the product comes in some shape, when it's usable, that is the starting point of the product life cycle.
Okay.
So when we hand over the product to the customer, then its life cycle is started, and when he uses it, and I think till its termination of the actual product, that It is the product life cycle, and project life cycle is basically when you conceive the idea of designing the product. That is a project life cycle start point.
Okay, that is exactly what I wanted to see. Here you have exactly confused the two life cycles. You are considering the project life cycle to be the parent life cycle of the product life cycle, which is not really correct. What happens is that the product, the idea of the product has first been conceived. Somebody has imagined that there should be a product which should be able to do this. This is the product due to which this project has taken birth. It is not due to the project that the product has taken birth. It was basically the idea of the product which was first conceived, and somebody did some research on that, some business case development, feasibilities and all that, and ultimately they came up with the idea that this is feasible and we should do it. And that was the time when the project life cycle started. Project life cycle created that product, and then that product went into the market, into the operations, and then we started churning it out from the factory. It kept, we kept producing more and more, and ultimately there was a day when that product is no more. That was the point where that product life cycle has completed. But the product life cycle had started much before the project life cycle was even started. What do you say? What do you say?
Yeah, very right. Very right, sir.
Correct, sir. Correct, sir.
So from this point of view, product life cycle is a wider and a bigger life cycle, and this may be spread over years, decades, or even centuries. Just look at the example of a product like a pencil. When was the idea of pencil first conceived? Maybe centuries ago, maybe decades ago. Till today we are using this product and we don't know when this product life cycle is ever going to finish. So pencil is a product which life cycle is so very long. But you might get a project to create a new version of pencil which has liquid lead. This could be your project, but the life cycle of the product is the same. Until and unless that product line is discontinued, you are in the same product life cycle. But within that product life cycle, you could have a number of projects related to that product, and there could be many project life cycles. Therefore, the product life cycle does not start by the end of the project life cycle, but product life cycle has started much earlier. Is it okay with everybody?
It's wonderful, sir. Wonderful, sir.
Sir, if we relate this life cycle with humans, it means you are saying that even the child is not born, its life cycle is started? Is it so?
Of course, of course. As soon as the child is conceived, the life cycle has started. There might be the phase of conception,
Yeah.
in which the pregnancy, 9 months of pregnancy could be a one complete phase. And in that phase, though you don't have any control over it, but still there are certain things happening in that period. Then you physically open your eyes in front of the earth, that is the birth, and then your other phases start. So this is natural if I consider the conception also as one of the phases.
Yeah, I think in some countries, like in Japan, they count your age from the first 9 months. They include the first 9 months in your age.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now the interesting part. You see, you said project starts from the project life cycle, from the conception. Now this is very interesting, where we should consider the start of a project. Is it the time when we imagined the idea of starting the project, where we created the business case or feasibility of the project, Should feasibility be part of the project or it should be a pre-project activity? It is exactly like the example of a human life. If we started from the conception, then probably the feasibility could be a part of the project. In some of the projects, we consider feasibility as part of the project. But in other projects, feasibility is considered a pre-project activity or a separate project which has already completed and given its product that this is feasible and now we should do it. And then we define another start, and that start is normally defined by the giving of the charter by the project sponsor to the project manager. Some starting point has to be there to define the start of the project, and there must be a finishing point because project is a temporary endeavor. It must start at any point, some point in time, and it must finish at some point in time. So this is just natural. If somebody says to me that their project have started right from the feasibility, I would very much agree with that. But then I would ask him to give me the charter before the business case was ever created, the feasibility was ever started. So if you want to add that period, that conception period into the project life cycle, then project has started at that time, so you should include it as a phase. Do you agree with that?
So
Yeah.
won't that be too long?
Say
The idea was conceived like two years back, 3 years back. So life cycle would be spanning like many years.
Life cycle would be spanning many years, of course. Rather, life cycle of what? Project or product?
Of a project.
Project. Yes, of course. It depends upon the type of project you are dealing with. If it is an IT project, probably 3 to 6 months or even a year is a long time. But for a pharmaceutical project, the minimum time of a pharmaceutical project is like 7 years. It can go up to 15 years. So this depends upon the industry you are talking about.
Fine, sir.
Right. So all projects have a purpose or objective, where objective is a service or result. Now this is interesting because we have been talking about the product life cycle so far. What about the product, service and result? Do you remember the definition of the project? Definition of the project? It was a unique product, service or result. So far we are only talking about the product life cycle. It says if you are dealing with a service or result, then it would be a service life cycle or a result life cycle. But generally speaking, we refer to it as product life cycle. But actually this should be called as a service life cycle or a result life cycle if it is not a product life cycle. The product may have many projects associated. Additional efficiencies may be gained by managing all related projects collectively. Now this is again interesting. All related projects. If I am talking about a product line which is spread over decades, you do have a product manager in your organization. What is the responsibility of that product manager? That product manager is the custodian of the history of that product line. That product manager is the futurist who imagines the future of that product line. And he is also responsible for coordinating all the projects related to that product line currently being handled. You see, this concept is beyond the portfolio and program. You may have programs and portfolios running right now in your organization, but the person having who is the product manager would have a different view into the third axis, Z axis, that is a time. He is looking at the lifeline of the product. So he can highlight many interesting things. He can actually be the custodian of that product line altogether. So product managers can play a very interesting role in in projects because those projects might be from their product line. So additional efficiencies may be gained by managing all such projects together. A number of separate projects may be related to the development of a new automobile. So this is the same product line, but there are 5 different projects which are trying to create one car. So this automobile is part of the same product line. Each project may be distinct by itself, but still contribute a key deliverable necessary to bring the automobile to the market. Oversight of all these projects by a higher authority could significantly increase the likelihood of success, and that higher authority could be the product manager. And that's how we can use the skill of the product manager, who is the historian and who is the futurist for this product line. So this is another very interesting concept. We are now talking about the product management. We talked about the portfolio management, program management, project management, and now we are talking about the product management, though it is not the subject of this project management, but this is a relation we wanted to show. Project life cycle, we have phases which could be broken down in any manner. Now, how do you break up the phases? Well, there is no specific mechanism of doing that. Everybody has got his own way of doing it. You could break your phases into the major parts of the project. Maybe you can break your phases according to the major work of the project. Maybe you do it on the technical nature of the project. Maybe you do it on some grouping or classification. Maybe you break the project into phases on the financial basis. So whatever the mechanism you use, we have absolutely no objection to that. Phases could be broken down functionally. Intermediate results are deliverables, maybe based on some milestones, maybe based on the financial availability or whatever. But these phases are generally time bound. I do not mean when I say time bound that all the phases are equal in size. No. All the phases have their own objective to achieve, which could take some time. That means every phase is a project in itself. It should have a starting point and a finishing point, and therefore one phase could be a 3-month phase, another phase could be a 6-month phase. Phases may not be of the same duration, but they will all start at a specific point and end at a specific point in time. And those points where a project starts or finishes are called the control points. A life cycle can be documented with a methodology. Life cycle can be determined or shaped by the unique aspects of the organization, industry, or technology. You see, some organizations would have ready-made life cycles for their project. So it would be their part of their governance structure that whatever project starts in this organization, it should be divided according to this project life cycle. So they have a default life cycle for all projects. Maybe your organization is a web development company and you only develop a certain kinds of web pages. So whatever project comes to you, you may have a standard life cycle and you may start doing every project according to the same life cycle. This life cycle could have been, could be standardized in the organization. It could have been taken up from the industry practices or whatever mechanism you feel fit. While every project has a definitive start and a definitive end, the specific deliverables and activities that take place in between will vary widely with the project. It provides a basic framework for managing the project. Now, project life cycles can range from a continuum from predictive to plan-driven approaches on one end and adaptive to change-driven approaches. Predictive or plan-driven approaches are one end and adaptive or change-driven approaches are the other end. Now, let me explain what are these predictive or plan-driven approaches. When you are sure about the scope of your project, when you are, I have to construct a school or a house and you know how many rooms are going to be there, that requirements are absolutely clear, are somewhat clear, then the product and deliverables are defined at the beginning of the project. Although there might be changes, but any changes to the scope will be very carefully managed. There will be not many changes, there will be controlled changes. So if scope is very clear, the changes would be less. Therefore, we can plan ahead of time. Most of the things would be properly planned in the beginning, and therefore such a life cycle would be predictive in nature. I would already know how the project is going to go with minor little changes here and there. But in an adaptive life cycle or a change driven life cycle, here the project is highly dicey. The scope is not clear at all. Scope is completely shifting all the time. The product is developed over multiple iterations. So what we start doing is we do project in a very small brackets. We say, okay, we don't know how the product is going to turn out to be, but what are the first steps? What should we do first? So the first things first, you complete only small little portion and produce some results, and based on that results you design the next iteration and then the next iteration, and meanwhile the project can keep changing and you can keep moving ahead. So with a highly changing scope, you keep developing an adaptive life cycle, and that way you can complete the project. This is normally very popular in IT. This is called agile. So projects vary in size and complexity. No matter how large or small, simple or complex, all projects can be mapped to some kind of life cycle. So just for your understanding, the life cycle I'm going to show you is not the classical life cycle applicable to all type of projects in the world. But just for the heck of it, we are trying to say there are 4 phases in your project, and let us call them starting, organizing, carrying out and closing. Such a life cycle, a generic life cycle I would call it. In a generic life cycle, if I draw it on a scale of time on x-axis and cost and staffing level on the y-axis, over the period of time of the project life cycle, the money which will be spent in the beginning phases would be slowly spent. But as we enter into actual work of the project, we start mobilizing huge resources. We start spending more money, and there is a time when we are at the peak of our expenses, and we stay there because this is the heat of the battle. This is where actual execution is in its full form, and then things start getting completed, and as and when the jobs are completed, our expenses start coming down, and ultimately at the closing of the project our expenses are coming to a close. Staffing is laid off completely at the end of the project and the project is done. So this is a general cycle, and you can see that the expenditure on the project, this is a daily expenditure or the monthly expenditure or periodic expenditure, that would show a pattern like this. And also, if these phases can be looked at closely, you can see at the end of every phase there has to be a product. For example, the first phase, if it was starting the project, then the result could have been project charter. Maybe the other phase could have been the organizing and preparing. The output would have been the project management plan. But this is not the classic example. This is just a generic project life cycle, and I just wanted to show you that every phase will have an output or a deliverable. I think we should continue from here tomorrow because it's almost the time. So any questions you have, you can ask now.
Sir, I just want to ask that like a project that has a definite start and end, I think product that cannot have a definite end. Is it so?
Okay. Okay. Can you come up with an example where you have seen the complete life cycle of a product?
So like iPods.
Wonderful, wonderful. So iPod is
I think any product which is obsolete in the market, that is, I think the product life cycle has ended for them.
But they're still making it, they're still marketing it, is still being sold. So life cycle is not ended. But yes, you can say that it is going down. Give me some other example.
Unmuted.
You can take the example of mobile phones, like one version of mobile iPhone 3 was in the market. I think its production is gone now. It's ended.
Till the time any one person is using that mobile, it is in use, the life cycle has not completely done away with. You have to bury it before you can complete the life cycle. What about a floppy disk?
Correct.
Do you see floppy disk anymore?
No, no.
So this is one example where the life cycle has ended. Did that clarify your doubt? Yes. Okay. Anything else you want to ask?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a question. Like taking the example of Lahore Orange Train project. Which kind of a product it should be? Is it a planned one or is it the adaptive one? Because for some reason, it is stopped because the external factors have affected on it.
And what is the name of the project?
Orange Train, Lahore.
Right.
Lahore Orange Train project.
Actually, this is basically, it's not an adaptive project. It is not at all an adaptive project. This is something which can be planned. This is the matter of, mismanagement, that you did not manage it properly, or, a lot many things we do which are not really to be done. So broadly, this is mismanagement. Rather, I would call this project not an agile thing. This is more of the other way.
Muted.
But see, the pillars have been erected and everything is done. And now somebody is, pursuing a case against that. They are destroying the,
Poor planning.
yeah.
That is poor planning. That is not. This is supposed to be a particular. We do not give proper time to planning, and therefore such like things happen. So this is poor planning. This is not change of scope.
Okay.
Okay, ji, should we call it a day now?
Yes, thank you very much. It was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for our time. Thank you very much.